Hi everybody, if there's anybody there. We're just trying to figure this out. Do you want me to add?
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to have Wajiha here at the Plan Canada offices to get me through this, the technicals. All right, what's all this?
These are all the comments.
Oh,
People are joining, yeah.
you're joining, it's working. This means we're actually up and, so what am I supposed to do with these?
You can, say hi to your people. Then we'll wait for Pelemo to join as well.
Hi everybody.
And you can talk to everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have we done all the technicals? I want to thank you all who I can see your names coming up. Hi Kathleen, everybody. This is awesome. I have to be totally honest with you. This is the very first time I've ever done an Instagram live interview. But I am all about new experiences, especially when it is going to help raise awareness about some of the greatest challenges facing children in the world, especially girls. You can see behind me, although it's backwards, hashtag until we are all equal. And that is what this is all about. It's part of Plan International Canada's Until We Are All Equal campaign. And obviously, depending on where you're joining from, we have seen progress when it comes to equality for women and girls, but we have such a long way to go in so many parts of this world. And I'm gonna give you, first of all, Wajiha, come and show everybody my fabulous technical assistant here. Here we're in the Plan offices at in Toronto, so we're Eglinton, and it's awesome to be here. Such a great team of people who are helping make all of this happen, because I absolutely could not. Instagram is a little bit of a new thing for me. So it's kind of cool to be doing this. But, as I was saying, there is such enormous inequality in most of the world, especially for girls. Women and girls are disproportionately impacted always. And I'm going to give you a big number to put that in perspective. Today, about 130 million girls, 130 million girls are not in school. They are denied this obviously fundamental, transformative, empowering human right of an education. That is a tragedy, and it is something we can change. It's something Plan is always working to change. There are, of course, tons of reasons for this inequality. Gender norms, unequal gender norms, cultural norms, poverty, child marriage, which is just one of the most egregious of all, complex issues that are really deeply entrenched in too many countries. And this is exactly the kind of inequality that we're talking about today. It's the reason this campaign, Until We Are All Equal, pretend that is flipped. It's the reason this campaign matters. It's the work that Plan International does. And we all have a stake in this, let's face it. We all have a stake in this. And there is something all of us can do, which is kind of empowering right there. But it's also the reason why, I think it was 28 years ago, I actually walked up to the office of Plan Canada. At that time, it was at Yonge and St. Clair. Walked in and said, what can I do to help? I wanted to do anything, stuff envelopes, I didn't care, but I wanted to do something to try to make a difference. And it didn't matter what. And here we are 28 years later, and I'm doing a live Instagram, so it's kind of cool. Things change, and there has been incredible development. Plan has managed to tap into so many girls' lives, help them through the challenges that they face. I am unbelievably excited to welcome today a young woman that also walked into a Plan office, so we definitely have that in common. She was determined to make a difference, and she really hasn't stopped since. So we're gonna now go to Abuja, Nigeria. Let's see, how do I get Pelemo in here? Stick with me. Let's see. Oh, voila, there you are. Hello, Pelemo.
Hi.
How are you? Let me turn your audio up here. How are you today? Good
I'm
afternoon.
great. How are you doing?
I'm good. This is very exciting. So you are in the plan office in Abuja, correct?
Yes, I am.
What time is it there for you?
It's 3:35 currently.
Okay, there you go. It's 10:35 Eastern Time, and thanks to technology, I get to see your beautiful face, and we can have this conversation. It's really awesome to be able to do this with you. And I have to say, Pelemo, at just 21 years of age, you already have an incredible list of accomplishments attached to your name. Poet, two-time TEDx speaker, State Secretary of the UN Youth Participatory Platform, and a volunteer with Young African Leaders Initiative. So you have been very, very busy. And I want to try to, first of all, just for everybody just meeting you today, give us some perspective, how you became the change maker and the leader that you are today. I mean, were you always so motivated as a little girl?
Well, I was an artist starting out as a little girl. I used to write songs, I used to dance. And I remember one time my mom told me a story of how we were in a salon and they were making her hair and it was hurting her. And I started really advocating for her like it was a serious thing. So I think my outspoken nature started like from way back then. And then for a while, I wasn't going out because I had to stay at home because I had a disability. And my mom was super protective. And somehow I had to kind of find my independence in that as well and let her know that I could do it. So she would support me to do it, you know. And then I started volunteering. Volunteerism was my way out into the world. And I realized I could do really great things speaking up for issues that I cared about. And I did that through the arts. And now I'm here. And I'm really, really excited about what the future holds.
Oh, I love hearing that. I love your optimism. But you know, I think about the health challenges that you have survived. Just for people who don't know, so many surgeries to try and correct a rare bone disorder, and you still manage to stay in school because, of course, education, education, education. I can't say it enough. And you managed to get good grades, so I know that is not easy. Especially in Nigeria, where so many girls are left behind when it comes to an education. So, from your perspective, how do you think that an education can empower girls? How did it empower you to build the kind of inclusive society that really, that is what we are all striving for all over the world?
Education is the most foundational thing a person could have to empower them. So I'm really glad you asked this question because without education, girls don't really have agency, right? And there are a lot of cultural norms and biases that are the order of the day. And if you don't have an education, you wouldn't really know what it means to live outside of other people's opinions of you. So in Nigeria, we have a lot of cultural biases that say this is what a girl can do and this is what a girl can't do. And from going to a lot of different places and going to school, I would like to point that education doesn't always have to be formal education because there's also informal education. So just getting this enlightenment in different ways really helped me to gain my voice. And I honestly did not understand why there was a gender disparity, like why girls and boys were different in terms of opportunities, economic opportunities, educational opportunities. I did not really understand it because everybody deserves an education, right? So I think that young people having that foundation helps. And the question of education is not a direct question because there's a lot of intersectionality that goes into young people and girls particularly. There are girls with disabilities, there are girls that are going through, they are in areas of conflict, there are girls with families that come from homes that are not necessarily so secure. And so it's a very intersectional issue. And so trying to speak about it is not a one directional thing. And I just really, really do believe that education is one way to empower a girl, and every girl deserves the right to education.
You know, in Canada, and so for anybody watching from Canada or certainly the United States, education is equal for boys and girls. Explain further why that is not the case, why you believe that is not the case in Nigeria and so many countries, but let's use Nigeria. That's where you are right now.
So there are a lot of cultural norms and cultural biases, religious norms and religious biases that govern the way Nigerians think. And people have serious text to back up their beliefs. And so these cultural biases place men higher than women fundamentally, right? The man is the head, the man is the head, the man is the head. And based on gender roles, girls are seen as um, domestic workers. We should do chores, we should stay at home, we should be good wives, and that is what it is fundamentally. And so in Nigeria, they are not preparing the girl to be a CEO of a company in most communities in rural areas. They are preparing you to be a good wife. And even an educated woman has that at the back of her mind, like, because culture, they'll tell you you're supposed to be a good wife. So somehow, even with your education, you might feel like, oh, this is still my place, even with the education. So I do feel like there is still a long way to go to breaking the bias and just finding gender equality for girls. And it begins with education and just decolonizing your mind from that mindset, basically.
Yeah. You know, obviously, there's no doubt in so many parts of the world, girls have no say in the decisions that affect their lives. You've just outlined some of them. Girls should be domestic workers and they should be wives, mothers. But whether it's going to school or whether it's being forced into a marriage at 14, these are things imposed on girls. They have no seat at the table, if you will. So what positive changes, because we do want to still be optimistic about the future, as you say, and that is what is part of you, but what positive changes have you seen when girls are brought into the decision-making role in those conversations that impact their lives and change their lives?
Okay. So I would like to state quite boldly that inclusion is not a privilege, it's a right. And when you're a part of a society, when you're a part of a community or an issue, you should be brought to the table. You should have a seat on the table to speak, right? And that is something I really learned through serving as a leader in different areas with different organizations, is that they're not doing me a favor by bringing me into the room. I'm actually necessary because you're creating a solution for girls. So it only makes sense that girls should be at the table, and we're a very important stakeholder. When you give girls that position, you realize that girls are not incapable. We just lack opportunity. And I think I've forgotten who said it, but I know she's a musician. I've forgotten her name at the moment, but she did say that girls don't lack potential, they lack opportunities. And so bringing them to the table, you see that we're able to create more sustainable solutions to problems, because the people that are actually going through the issue are there to give you solutions. And so global impact can only start through local solutions, right? And it's the same thing when it comes to gender. You can't just have men at the table. When it comes to girls' issues, girls should also be there, and girls are very capable of leading in their own way and in their own capacity. And it takes us back to education, and why education is really, really necessary to build girls as the leaders that they are supposed to be.
You know, I was listening to one of your TED Talks, and I loved one of the lines you said, there would be no need for the word inclusion if exclusion didn't already exist. I thought that was like so true. You know, if we could translate it so quickly and delete the word and have this kind of inclusion and equality But I want to, because I would be remiss if I didn't talk to you about conflict. So many countries are experiencing conflict, severe economic hardship, the impact of climate change, which is so real where you are and so devastating. How, in your opinion, are girls' lives most impacted during times of unrest? And why are girls so disproportionately impacted over boys?
Okay, so girls are very vulnerable during times of conflict because a lot of their needs are not met. And in Nigeria specifically, during economic downturns, during climate change, and during times of conflict, a lot of girls suffer because, for instance, let's say in a community now, the family is impoverished or they are going through a time of economic hardship and they think, what is the solution to this? What can I do? And somehow the girl ends up playing the role of a caregiver or playing the role of a parent themselves or a breadwinner in the family. And the girl has to work within the household and do things that a child should not do. And I'm not talking about youth like from the age of 18. I'm talking about young girls from the age of 11, 12. Or these same girls, something that is very common in Nigeria that is not so mainstream is child labor. So people in smaller communities, in rural communities, sometimes send off their children to the cities to work. And the person in question could promise your child an education, a good future, and then you send off your child to the city. And then your child is abused, the girls are molested, the girls go through a lot of violence because of their gender, and they don't even get compensated, and they are doing all that work just because their family wanted a better future for them or thought they could do a trade-off, basically. And also some girls go through early marriages as well because the family feels like there is no other
And give people perspective on that. When we say early marriage, we are not talking about girls at 22 years of age. We are talking about 13 years old. And you know, it is just as I say, it is the most egregious part of this, that a child could basically be sold into marriage. And it is a very real situation in so many parts of the world.
And the thing about conflict or unrest is the fact that it takes a very long time to recover from it. And conflicts do a lot to affect girls mentally as well as their lives and where they can go and things they can do.
I think the point is, if change was ever needed, it is needed right now, Pelemo, and you are part of that change. And I know you had a unique opportunity to shadow Plan Nigeria's country director. And you know, you and I have that in common because I hear you just walked into a Plan office and said, what can I do to help? And I did the same thing here in Toronto. Again, just that desire to do something. And what was that moment like for you when you said, I need to volunteer, I need to do something to help the other girls in my community, in my country?
Okay, so it was very interesting. Usually takeovers are very ceremonial, and so they just give you the chair and you take pictures and you act like you're the country director for a day. And you know, when I first walked into the office that day, the country director was not even around.
So every single country has a country director who is responsible for determining where the need is and this sort of thing. So you walk in that office, take it away.
Yes. So I walked in the office and he wasn't even around, but we had a meeting prior to that and he wasn't there. So I actually had to be the country director for that day. And I started replying emails, and the emails were so many. I honestly don't think I've seen that many emails. I was like, wow, this is a lot.
Wow.
And I had to chair a meeting. I had a meeting with a bank And like, it was just really interesting stuff. And I signed the document literally, and I was so humbled in that moment because I realized that just that exposure alone opened my mind to the possibility of I can be a country director someday, and then it went on for a year, and I worked more in the organization, interning, going out on the field. The most dear moment to me was when I went to one of the states in the north and just spoke to the girls and just learned about what they had to say. And it was just really, really impactful to not only speak on stages, but also connect deeply with these girls.
You are such a role model to other girls in your country, and it's just, you're so inspiring. And I wonder, what were some of the lessons you learned, the most interesting lessons you learned about inclusion and equality during that year?
Okay, so I'll just keep it brief and say again that inclusion is not a privilege, it is a right, and we all deserve to be heard and a seat at the table. And a lot of organizations are very tokenistic. So they bring in a young person and say, we're working with young people, and then there's no activity. But as the young person, you need to learn how to make that meaningful. Even if you're not being engaged, sometimes you need to be the one to push for your own engagement, because it won't always be easy to get that inclusion.
How do you find that? How do you teach a young girl who's shy or feels like so many girls and women, it's almost a default position for women to feel, oh no, I can't put myself forward, that imposter syndrome, if you will. How do you teach a young girl to step forward and to find her inner strength? You know, the other girls that were in your class, were you able to get them involved?
So me, in school, I was that girl that, well, I was outspoken, but I was still left behind. And
why?
So, because of my disability, basically.
So you were in a wheelchair at that time?
Yes, I was in a wheelchair. And so it was difficult for me to engage on any level. There were staircases in the school. I couldn't even go out during playtime to play. So I was always alone in the classroom, right? So I went through, I don't know how I got people skills. That's really a miracle, because
your mother.
I was alone a lot, and that was not great. But I think that representation is important. I saw some women where I wanted to be. And my mom, shout out to my mom. My mom is an amazing woman who has carried responsibility. When they say people are fight or flight people, my mom is a fight person. So I've always learned to, speak when necessary. I still get scared, but I just think representation helps girls envision who they could be. And also having events or having initiatives that makes girls take leadership responsibilities, like the shadowing opportunity, for instance. I think more organizations should do things like this, intentionally making sure that girls are a part of what they are doing.
What, if I can ask, scares you now? There might be other girls who can relate to that, and if we hear how you've come through it, it would give them some incentive and some inspiration.
Okay, so what scares me is the fact that inclusion is not always meaningful. Organizations do things for very tokenistic reasons to get grants. People are so fueled by the temporary gratification they get from just accomplishing one task or ticking off a box, And so I'm scared that meaningful participation might not actually be happening, especially for Nigeria, because Nigeria is really backwards when it comes to gender equality. And people are so anti-gender equality and feminism because they think it is a Western agenda. And I remember one time I was speaking about sexual and reproductive health and rights. And one of my friends was like, no, don't bring that here. These people are trying to brainwash us. So our mindset needs to change, and it's not only with the older generation, it's with the young people too, so it's scary, but I have a lot of hope.
But it's why do young people feel that way? Because again, it comes back to education. if you are not taught, or if that is what you are taught by the surroundings, it's what you then become an adult and still believe. So this has to change at such a young level. And it's people like you that are going to change the future. And I know that it's easy to lose faith given the inequality around us, but how do you remain optimistic? What gives you optimism for the future?
I keep showing up. I tell people my own advocacy is showing up, because if you don't show up, so I have a disability, and most spaces in Nigeria were not created for me. And I go there and I face the attitudinal barriers, I face the accessibility barriers, but then they need to see me to know that inclusion is necessary. Because I say something, I say in Nigeria, we're not really bothered about shoveling snow in America because we're not there, so we don't care. But it's something people are doing, right? So if the issue is not your immediate issue, you don't really think about it so much. So I think going out there and really doing it, right? And I see so many young girls, so many girls doing the thing. And so I'm really proud, and I can't wait to see, especially partnerships and collaborations are really happening, and young people are really audacious, especially in Nigeria, so energetic. So I'm really, really hopeful, and I think that we will get to.
And I know for you, I love the line, keep showing up. That's genius. And I see there's all kinds of notes people are sending. I can sort of see them coming up on the screen here. And everyone is resonating with your line, keep showing up. I love that. But I know that you have used poetry to help lift yourself during some dark times and frame the future. And I think it would be really special if you're comfortable. Everyone would love to hear if you could read a piece of your own poetry. That would be spectacular.
I would love to.
Yeah, so you can even sing if you want to. We'll sing together.
Okay, so the title of this piece is What is My Name? And it goes like this. Before I could fully learn how to say my name, I was acquainted with shame. It was the undertone in every nursery rhyme, a prefix in the title of my story, and I suckled on it, like a newborn to a mother, until it furnished my DNA with identity, the woman that claimed to love me, held me by the jugular, and shoved trauma-bloodied words in my mouth, forced them down my throat, and reflex made me swallow. She taught me that my body was an abandoned temple, rejected by the one who made it, as if God makes mistakes or he embedded a question mark in me and forgot to proofread before publishing. Rotten, broken, poorly written was the artificial remaining of this body. And what do children know about language and identity? They swallow anything, regurgitate, chew, chew and chew until it becomes a part of them like a metaphor. I was a skilled reader. My eyes knew to identify others like me in shows like The Ugly Duckling, Ugly Betty, Hunchback of Notre Dame before I could spell my name. I knew how to read the room, and every expression was a letter emailed to memory, an indication that I was indeed a rotten poem. And there were days where I attempted to erase myself. I begged God to squeeze me and throw me to the back like a rotten piece of literature. Now, I wonder how a child can recognize stigma before her own potential. Isn't that another way to forcefully deflower a girl? Feeding her torn pages of a forced narrative, of a single story, overdosing on a false narrative before she can even dance through the ABCs, convincing her that you are what you eat. After putting her on a myopic diet, blinding her little eyes from the Shakespearean light within her, with question marks dangling all over her head and induced amnesia to make her forget. How do I rewrite the encyclopedia of a now-grown woman? Retract the vocabulary, set fire to the history. How do I tell her that the reflection in the mirror isn't hers? That it's only but a literary mirage written when mother was more focused on spare the rod and spoil the child to see? That someone else was offering her daughter's life. How do I convince her that she is poem enough, light enough, loved enough. She is poem enough, light enough, loved enough. Give me a backspace button to undo the writing. Your body is not broken. Those legs are not rotten. Let's change the front page and the front cover. Let's show her that all her poetic graces, alliteration in crooked places, metaphors and paradoxes, make her temple enough for holy dwelling. Banish the heathen thoughts. Shh. Let's tell her that she is exactly what God intended for beauty to look like, and watch her become a poem that remembers itself, a fine being, born again from the dying embers.
I'm speechless. It was absolutely beautiful, Pelemo. That is the words in that poem. I mean, if every girl could internalize, and woman, the words that you've just put together, it's like music. It's so beautiful. And you've been writing poetry since a little girl, and I pull out some lines in that poem that saddened me so deeply that there were moments you thought you couldn't go forward, and yet you found the strength inside of you. Incredible.
Thank you so much.
You know, a lot of people, I'm all emotional now. People are asking questions. Obviously, I'm trying to figure out how to figure this out, but thankfully, Wajia has just handed me some questions. At Daniela Takes Photos says, Pelemo, how are writing poetry and being an activist similar?
Wow, that's an amazing question. Thank you so much. So, storytelling connects us to our human nature. Storytelling connects us to each other as people. And storytelling, I think, is one of the key ways to get to the hearts and the souls of people and the souls of an issue in activism. So storytelling for me is a very powerful tool. It can come through different art forms, but poetry specifically has the power to, people in development organizations, people talk about numbers a lot. You see a lot of big numbers and all. But sometimes people can't internalize it because it's just so abstract. And so poetry brings the life to the issue. It brings the truth and the soul to the issue, and people connect instantly with it. And so I think activism and poetry are similar in those ways, because activism has a lot of storytelling and a lot of showing up and a lot of speaking up. So poetry and activism, and I think they really go hand in hand for me, and I'm really using my poetry for activism, and my activism is obviously my poetry. So I'm always speaking up, always.
Oh, well, you honestly, you have a gift, and we are so fortunate to hear it. But you just also said something. I find just in the people I talk to who feel a desire, they see problems in the world, but they feel like, what can I do? I'm one person. What can I do to change anything? You've done it. So what would your advice be to people all over the world watching this, that one person can make a difference?
I would say that you are the one you are waiting for. I think a lot of people think we need a messiah to come save us, or one organization to pick us up, or somebody to find us and make us worthy of doing. But why don't you think you can be that one person? One soul carries so many other people's, should I say, destinies, other people's, what they could become. One person could be the key to all that. And I think for me, I always remember that my life is not mine alone. And I think that's what got me into activism, really. It's not just for me. And if nobody speaks on this matter, if I don't speak, then nobody might speak. For instance, with disability inclusion, barely anybody is speaking on it, right? And so I started a page called Disability with Pearl, where I share a lot about disability inclusion. And I noticed that a lot of people started replicating it, sharing about disability inclusion as well. And it took that one step, that one person. And I think we all have our unique gifts. We all have other people's lives tied to us. And if you can just take that one step, you realize that there's a whole stairwell and there's just so much waiting for you. And so it's about that one step.
You are such a leader. You're a born leader. And I have to say, like, when I think about, inequality and activism, I know that, we're talking about the situation in Nigeria, but certainly even in Canada, women in the workforce are outranked, out-earned, outnumbered. So there are inequalities here also. But at Summer Friday 1994, that must have been a good Friday in 1994 to name your Instagram address, that is asking the question, will we reach gender equality in our lifetimes? That's a big one, Pelemo.
Well, based on the statistics, based on the numbers, honestly, I am not super optimistic. I am optimistic, but I don't see so much progress, and it's no surprise or it's no news that we are really lagging behind in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And speaking from the context of Nigeria, there's a lot happening here, and there's a lot of work we need to do. There's a lot of meaningful work to be done, which is why one of my fears was meaningful youth inclusion and not just tokenism. Because if we actually bring people who are willing to serve, who are willing to actually do the work and really put youth in the center of it, I think we would make more progress. But right now, I would say honestly, it doesn't look statistically possible yet, but I am hoping that we put in more efforts and take greater strides, and we will get to a good percentage in our lifetimes.
At Human Shani Cummins is asking, which is timely for what you've just said, what can we do as individuals and as a collective to show up and to support gender equality in Nigeria or everywhere?
So I think, first of all, identifying your strengths and your interests and using that as tools to influence decision making, to influence the spaces you are in. So gender equality does not necessarily always have to start from top of the pyramid and then flow down. It can be a bottom-up approach, which I think is really effective as well. So it's what kind of ideologies do you have, and what kind of ideologies are you pushing out into the world, right? What stories are you telling about the women around you, about yourself? What are you really pushing into the world? I think that is where we can start from. And so if you are working in the administrative section of your office, you have a story to tell. If you are a poet, you push gender equality through that. So it's in your own little space, making sure that you are gender sensitive, gender aware, and gender transformative in your approaches and in your thinking. I think that is a great place to start, and taking that one step towards pushing. And I think collaborating with people and holding space for people to, talk about these issues also does a lot, because again, back to education, people need to be aware of it, right? And I know it's dangerous in some countries, but you can be subtle about pushing, because the way isn't always activism doesn't always have to be forceful. It can also be subtle, right? So you don't also get harmed in trying to make a change. So
That's very true. And you talk about the things you don't learn in school are the self-talk. And I would say for myself, if I could speak to my younger self, I wish I had learned better self-talk and better self-acceptance at a younger age, that it would have helped during the tougher times. And it is something that if you can help a child learn, it does make a difference in their lives. And I know, as you say, it's in some countries it's impossible. I think of all those beautiful girls in Afghanistan banned actually banned, the only country on planet Earth where they are banned from a classroom. And so there is an enormous amount of work to do ahead. And I think we're all very lucky to know that you are one of the young leaders. I also know that people would love to know where they can read more of your poetry. So how can people follow your work, read your poetry? What's the best way for people to do that, Pelemo?
Okay, so you can follow my Instagram. It's my name, Pelemo Nyaju. I could just type that in.
See, you know how to do that. You're under 30. You know exactly how to do that. I'm sure I'm forgetting to push. Should I be pushing something on?
No, we're good.
So you're gonna pop that up,
Yes.
and I will hopefully see it somewhere. Voila. Okay, there it is. That's your Instagram handle. So everybody sees that on the screen. You can read more of Pelemo's poetry. I was so incredibly moved by your poem. I know there's so much more there, and I've loved, truly, truly loved having the chance to speak to you today. And by the look of the comments, so has everybody else. Thank you, Pelemo, really, on behalf of Plan International Canada, on behalf of this campaign, until we are all equal. There are actually so many inspiring stories, as you know, of women and girls who, against all odds, have accomplished so much and forced change in their own communities. So everybody can learn more about that also by following @Plan Canada. There's so many cool stories and things to see also on the website, plancanada.ca/equal. As I said, Plan is definitely on a mission to help improve the lives of 200 million girls by the year 2027. So, and timing is everything, as it always is. All donations that we make before June 30th, I want to get this right, so I'm absolutely going to read off my page. All donations made before June 30th will be matched twice. So your hard-earned money goes even further for such an incredible cause. And as a determined optimist, and I know Pelemo is a determined optimist, I believe every single girl deserves a fair chance at a good life. So does Plan. So do all of you. Obviously, you've watched this interview, so you care, you want to make change, you want to see a better world. As I say, we all have a stake in this. There's no us and them anymore. There really is just us. And I am so inspired and thrilled to have had this conversation with you, Pelemo. To everybody, I want to thank you for watching. Let's go out and make some change today. One last word from you, Pelemo, before I click the red button that's going to say end.
You are the one you've been waiting for. And Lisa, you are amazing. Thank you so much for doing this with me and the team at Plan Canada. Everybody has been absolutely amazing, and I'm so happy it worked out.
Oh, and the technology work. That's a great line, by the way. You are the one you have been waiting for. We have to stop looking outside of ourselves and find it inside of ourselves. You are an inspiration, and I can't wait to get to Nigeria, to meet you in person, and also to follow your incredible path. I think the future is in good hands with people like you, Pelemo. Thanks to everybody for watching. Let me just, yes, you can donate through the link, as I said, on the plancanada.ca/equal, and all donations matched twice before June 30th. Okay, bye everybody. This has been fun. Pelemo, bye-bye. Have a great day. Bye.